Thanks for tuning into the podcast with me, Jonathan Puddle. This is episode 48 with therapist and author and mother and wonderful person, Aundi Kolber. We talk about trauma, what trauma does in the body and the brain, and how God has designed our bodies and brains to feed us the very information that we need to heal from trauma. So please have a listen to this. I think you'll really enjoy it. This is one of my favorite interviews. Go check out the show notes as well, because there's links to Aundi's book, which is coming out soon, and some resources from herself on her own website, where she teaches you how to ground yourself and improve your tolerance in the face of stressful, potentially traumatic situations. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody, with me, Jonathan Puddle. Thank you for tuning in today. I am very, very excited to have another guest on the show who I have been, social media hounding for, I don't know, I think at least 2 years. I started following you, Aundi, on Twitter first, and then Instagram, and then wherever. So I don't remember even how I found you, but I'm glad I did. So, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Aundi Kolber, therapist, writer, social media healer, and wonderful mom, and smiley person that I'm smiling back at on Skype right now. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hey, well, thanks so much for having me. I don't think I had any idea that it had been 2 years that you said that you've been hounding me. And I would say it's not been hounding. It's been very respectful, great interaction. And I really appreciate you too.
Well, thank you. I think it has been about 2 years, because I remember definitely there's kind of a handful of people in certain circles. I mean, obviously Twitter has kind of these circles, right? Christian Twitter has these kind of realms where people live and interact. And I probably stumbled upon you maybe in the kind of Caitlin Curtis deconstruction, but friendly deconstruction world.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's probably true. That sounds about right.
And then I jumped over to Instagram, and I am the better for it. I feel like there was, as I was preparing for this interview, there was this huge temptation to just basically plan out all 45 minutes worth of therapy questions for my session here. And then I thought that's not fair. Let's open this up to everybody. So you talk a lot about being trauma informed. Can you unpack that for super simple? Because from my perspective, I'm shouldn't every counselor be shouldn't that be a default? What does that mean? And what does that then differ from those who would say who wouldn't focus on being trauma informed?
Yeah. Well, let me start with saying this. So I'm a licensed therapist in Castle Rock, Colorado, and I've been practicing for about 12 years. And so in answer to that question specifically, the trauma-informed piece, I would say I would love for every counselor, and probably even further, sometimes I've been joking around lately, but not really joking, that the future is trauma-informed. I'm just really passionate about the idea that understanding our bodies and understanding the way that we are affected by pain and what happens when we are experiencing pain is so significant that essentially everyone should know about it, whether or not they would identify themselves as a survivor of trauma. And so basically what that means at its core is just understanding that our body is a system. And that system, when we are experiencing something that our body perceives to be terrifying or a threat, part of our brain, the top part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, goes offline. And that is so that we can respond to threat really quickly. And that prefrontal cortex, though, is a super important part of our brain. It integrates sort of all of who we are. It's sort of what, from a faith perspective, kind of makes us the most human. It's I would say almost this imprint of the Imago Dei. This is what's particular to humans. And it allows us to do things like think about thinking and have empathy and plan ahead and have perspective. And I mean, it's not the most, I mean, it's not the most important part of us because we need all of who we are, but it has a really important role. And so all that to say, understanding that trauma, things that feel like they could become trauma, it causes us not to be our true self.
Yes.
And so when we bring that lens in to church or our communities or our schools or our therapy office, we come to recognize that, if our body is reacting to what it's perceiving to be threat from a subconscious place, this is not us choosing to not be ourselves. It's our body responding to something that's happening. And so it really shifts our perspective because it changes it from being like, I'm choosing to be difficult, or I'm choosing to be anxious, or I'm choosing to be disconnected. Oftentimes, we have to address the underlying issues that are coming up that are causing our body to feel unsafe.
So that feels already like a pretty accurate. You're not saying this, but I'm hearing you say this is a lot of the time what we get wrong as Christians, and what the church often gets wrong. Well, just cast that demon out. Well, just try harder. Well, just if you had more faith, you wouldn't be dealing with these issues. I can look around my church and I can see the people who are dealing with depression, anxiety, major psychological disorder. And I can see the ones who know that there are tools. And I can see the ones who think they just have to try harder.
Yeah.
I can see the people as well who also just believe, well, if those people just tried harder, they would be okay. But I mean, if we're talking with the trauma lens, you're undercutting all of that and saying, look, your whole system of who you are as a person is not permitting you. This is not your choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think what's so beautiful is that actually recognizing that and doing the work that we need to feel safe in our bodies and to connect to ourselves gives us more choice, right?
Yes.
So it changes from reactions to being responsive. We shift, so when my brain, so let me just give you an example. Like, let's say I grew up in a home where there's lots of, emotional wounding, and there's lots of feelings like it's not okay to express our emotions, and I feel a lot of shame. And then I grow up and I connect with people who also do that because that feels familiar to me. And I'm constantly feeling a little bit out of control. And then I see that and I want to I get angry at myself, and I'm like, oh, I'm such a bad Christian and I'm not disciplined enough and I'm all these things. But if I changed my posture and began to get curious and say, I wonder what story is telling me that I need to have a connection with people who keep treating me this way. And I wonder why I don't have compassion for the pain and the anxiety that's coming up. And as I do that, what actually happens is that prefrontal cortex that we talked about earlier, if we can come from a more gentle, integrated perspective, we're more ourselves. And so then I have choices. So, I mean, I think there's a sense in which, understanding our bodies, understanding that our development, our communities, our relationships, they impact our actual neural wiring in our bodies. And when we can then have compassion and curiosity with that, we can sort of work with them rather than it just happening to us.
Yes. Man. Okay. I'm so glad that we're talking. Obviously some of what you're saying I already know, but I'm going to pretend that I don't for the sake of our guests. But also okay, so 3 years ago. Backstory. I grew up as a missionary kid, traveled all around the world, never was long in one place. And even to this day, this house we have been living in for almost 3 years. And once I break 3 years, this will be the longest time I've ever lived in one place. And I would then at the same time tell you that I've never experienced any major traumas and nothing in my life that has really caused me any difficulties whatsoever, except for, the fact that my parents divorced. Except for the fact that my dad is gay, and that was a complicated thing to unpack, and so on and so forth. All of a sudden I'm starting to identify some difficult things. So
Mm.
3 years ago, I'm sitting upstairs one night, and I felt like God said to me, "How would your life be different if you didn't believe that every good thing was about to come to a sudden end?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Screw you, God! I don't believe that." And then I
Mm.
like began to sob, and I was like, "That's exactly what I believe." And all of a sudden, like, I'm fairly emotionally self-aware, so all of a sudden these different scenarios began running before my mind, and I'm like, this and this and this and this. Oh my gosh, I do believe that.
Hmm.
And so I have spent the last 3 years, looking, like you just said, listening to that story and looking at that. Okay, what part of my upbringing has contributed into this? Okay, because I am terrified this conversation is going to end, and so I'm going to dominate it, and I'm gonna get as much as I possibly can because it might be the last thing I have.
Hmm.
And I become overbearing in relationships, and I have bad boundaries, and all these manifestations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've kind of pushed all the needs off to other people, right? And so it's kind of like, well, everybody else has to fulfill my emotional need. And it's like, I don't think I ever really realized how important it was to listen to my story,
Mm.
to listen to myself. And I, guests will know I interviewed Luke Gifford, and I don't know, I think I've mentioned this once or twice, but Luke said something to me that literally rewrote the course of my life. And he was like, Jonathan, you could spend a whole year like just practicing loving yourself, and that would be okay. So I've spent, let's just say it's been 6 months that I've spent sitting on the couch saying, Jonathan, I love you. And it started off super lame and weird until 2 or 3 days in when a voice responded and was like, interesting that you say that because you haven't acted that way. And I began getting in touch with some of my own kind of inner voice, my inner child, as it were, that felt like I hadn't cared for myself. And I'm like, what? So I kind of went on this weird journey that was pretty much just me and the Holy Spirit. But every few days I would read something from you or something from somebody else that was giving language to what I was experiencing personally, like privately with God.
Mm-hmm.
So which is partly why I'm so thankful and glad for following you on Instagram. That is clearly a plug that you should be following Aundi at Aundi Kolber on Instagram and Twitter. Make sure you do that. Okay, so you wrote in a recent post, what if you had the support you needed to listen to your true self?
Mm.
And I fell off my chair. And you said, one of the reasons I come from a trauma-informed perspective is that it frees us up to attune to our true selves. We have the deep privilege of participating with God in our wholeness. What on earth?
Would it be helpful for me to unpack that a little bit?
Go for it. I love it, but go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think so much of you might have already, picked that up when I'm talking about the trauma-informed perspective, but so much of that is about safety. And so for me as a therapist, especially, and I mean, not that this doesn't come, I mean, this comes into other parts of my life too, but particularly when I'm working, with folks in therapy, but also when I'm writing, and even as I'm writing the book that I have coming out, I'm really keeping this idea of safety in my mind. And to understand this, it's like we have to recognize there's this concept in psychology called the window of tolerance. Yes. And the window of tolerance is basically the level of intensity we can handle before basically our prefrontal cortex goes offline. And so
we get into those like amygdala-driven lizard hissing matches.
Yeah, it's like either we'll go to fight or flight or we'll go to freeze. So that's kind of what it looks like. Like that's what we would be doing when that's happening. And so essentially, when we've had more trauma, like when we've had, let's call it little t trauma, which is anything that overwhelms our nervous system's ability to cope.
So anything. So that's going to look... Anything that's like just too much.
Anything that basically we don't feel like we can process, move through, like it just feels too big. And, you might know it becomes trauma if when you think about it, this, my husband laughs when I use this word, but it's the best word. It feels yucky, is what I
Right.
say. Like, it's like you think about a memory and you're like, ugh, there's like, it's yucky, and it may bring up a visceral sensation, and it might bring up, like the smells, or it could bring up like, it's like a little bit of a videotape. And again, there's a really wide spectrum with trauma, but essentially I use a really broad definition of trauma because I'm really coming from it from a nervous system perspective, meaning if our nervous system couldn't process it, it becomes trauma. And so it doesn't really I mean, I say this like with caveats, but it doesn't really matter what happened if the way you perceived it was disturbing and you couldn't process it. So there are things that we would definitely say are big T trauma,
Yeah.
and those are any type of sexual violence, any type of a threat to your life, or observing someone where they're threatened, like their life is threatened. Those automatically are diagnosed. If you're having symptoms from those, it's diagnosed as basically PTSD. But little T trauma, and this is where most people get confused, is that when they hear little T trauma, they're like, well, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
And I use the analogy. It's kind of like a big T trauma is like you got a big cut from like a knife, and you need to go to the emergency room like right now. Like you need immediate treatment right now, and that's valid. But little T trauma is like, I got a paper cut, and I then looked at the paper cut and I was like, man, I had a paper cut and that doesn't matter. And then I got maybe 30 more paper cuts. And I was like, well, I'm not going to care for that paper cut because that's silly and I'm weak for getting paper cuts. And then the paper cuts continue to accumulate. And all of a sudden your hand is so infected because you haven't cared for it and you've never recognized that it's also a type of wounding, that it is as significant in its compound state as big as the knife wound.
Yeah,
in fact,
that makes perfect sense.
It can be as essentially like it can just cause the same symptoms because the compound nature of it.
I mean, I can think of workplace times in my career where I've been consistently and basically systematically overloaded with work and have had a portfolio of responsibility too large for me to handle, and realizing that was actually traumatic over the course of time. The constant feeling that I could never keep up, that I was never delivering on goals.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to look back at some years of my career and realize, actually, I've ended up feeling unsafe. Actually, I've ended up not trusting people or myself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that fits into that category. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think, so I guess, going all the way back, because I love to go on tangents, to that original, the post that you read of mine, it's like, when we have a lens that tells us we have to stay in our window of tolerance in order to listen, kind of how you described how you've been really working to listen to what's actually going on inside. We can't do that when we're in fight, flight, or freeze, because we're living out of the lower part of our brain, whose really only main goal is survival. And so that means that it's not our true self. Therefore, we can't really pull from the wisdom of our full experience of our humanity, and even really connect with God or the Holy Spirit, because we're wired to want to survive. And so I guess, that post, that the idea behind that is, I want to help people experience safety when they're actually truly safe, right? Like if we're not safe, let's make it safe first, like if you're going to get hit by a car, let's move out of the way of the car first. Right. But that then really opens us up to say, so what do I need? What is going on? What is keeping me stuck? What is God saying to me? How can I receive the love that people are offering me? How can I give myself the love that I'm worthy of receiving.
Yeah.
And so all of these things happen when we're in our window of tolerance, when we're integrated, because they're one and the same. Our window of tolerance means our brain is integrated. And so, I think unfortunately we live in a time where I think culturally there's been sort of this like, you shouldn't want to be safe. Like, who are you to think that you deserve safety? And I think we get this confused with comfort. And there, I think there's a time and a place to feel comfortable, but safety is even more foundational than comfort.
Yeah.
Safety, I really believe, like God desires for us to feel safe in our bodies and safe in our connections and safe with Him, so that we can then sort of have the freedom to use that as our like safe base. So then we can go out and be courageous. Because we know we have a safe place to come back to,
Yes.
we can go do scary things.
Yes.
But if no place is safe, like,
right.
What kind of life is that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. Seth Godin talks in The Icarus Deception about the difference between your comfort zone and your safety zone. And he's talking it totally in the context of like your economic risk taking, that like what's safe for you economically is no longer comfortable, and so you have to get out of your comfort zone to go and do something. But you're now juxtaposing those two things, right? I think it's like, okay, so if I can feel safe, then I have the capacity, hopefully, and the tools or resources to go and do something that might not feel comfortable.
Yes, that's exactly it. So that's actually what helps us build our window of tolerance.
Right.
So if we have so everyone has a window of tolerance, whether you've experienced trauma or not. People who've experienced more trauma, whether it's big T trauma or little t trauma, tend to have a smaller window of tolerance because their body has had to learn to adapt to sort of be on high alert. They're more easily shifted into fight, flight, or freeze because their body has learned there's maybe danger around every corner. And so the actual window in which they feel safe is quite small. But so if we can build the safety, then all of us can learn to tolerate discomfort. And that's the edges, right? Like that's where someone can give us feedback that maybe doesn't feel awesome, but we can hear it. Or like that's the place in which we can set a boundary with someone who is maybe highly triggering for us, but still know like it's valid and okay to do that. And like we're still ourselves. We're still connected to ourselves.
Like that's getting into identity, right? Like that actually your feedback is not devaluing who I am as a person. Okay, I wrote down another bullet, which I think is what you're touching on. You said as well recently that difficult things do not have to become trauma.
Yeah.
Oh, that feels very adult.
Well, and actually this goes really well with what we're talking about with the window of tolerance, because again, the trauma-informed lens really from like a cultural norm place. If we can say emotions are human, if we can say like it's good to pay attention to what you need so you can move through a hard thing rather than be stuck in it. Those are the types of things that allow difficult experiences to process, and instead of becoming trauma, they just become a part of our story.
Yeah. And
so most of us, have a very either or perspective on trauma. Like if you've gone through something hard, someone might say that could be trauma, but like maybe you're stuck there.
Hope you're enjoying this so far. We'll get back to Aundi in just a minute. I need to give a shout out to Marcus and Kim, my latest supporters on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for coming on there and supporting this important work. Friends, I am a full-time podcaster and author and children's pastor and stay-at-home dad. And so your support on Patreon and your reviews of this podcast and your sharing it with friends are what help me pay the bills and keep feeding my family. Also, our family is growing. Hopefully, we are in the process of foster and adoption training. It's been almost a year since we began, and should be in the next few months that we'll be bringing in another kid into our home. So your support helps with all of those things. Go to patreon.com/Jonathan Puddle to sign up. $3 a month is the lowest tier, and even that makes a real difference to us. And it gives you access to all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff, book studies that I've done, exclusive podcasts that are not released to the public, and it means I can really get connected with you on a more personal level. So please consider that, and let's get back to the show.
Like, you're forever traumatized. And the reality is people heal every day. Like, I am a survivor of complex trauma in my childhood. And there are certainly things that I have to continue to be mindful of and work through. But to be where I am and who I am in my life today, I can't really say it's anything other than a miracle, like a process miracle of experiencing the fact that our bodies can heal. Like, we can move through trauma. Like, it's a wound. It's not a character flaw. It's not, it's not even what's the word I'm looking for? Like, there's a sense in which it's happened. It can heal because it is a wound and because our bodies are made to heal.
Yeah. Okay, I'm interested about the body thing, because I can imagine, or like a lot of people would be like, well, it sounds like you're talking about your mind, or it sounds like you're talking about your soul, or like these kind of like soft aspects of who we are. But you're rooting this very much in the tangible, like in your body.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, great question. So, essentially, we tend to have in especially Western culture, we have a really big mind-body disconnect. And I even talk about this, with a faith perspective. I talk about, like, this is kind of functional Gnosticism.
Yes,
is a term I've come to coin, because it's like, we say our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, but we don't live like it. We say the flesh is bad and the flesh is weak, and it's all these things that are bad about us. And maybe our spirit's only good, and like, that's the only thing that's redemptive. And we know that Jesus came and lived in a body, and the significance of Jesus in a body is enormous.
Yeah.
So for me, that's, as a person who's a Christian, that's a really big point of integration. But the neuroscience is that essentially we have, so there's a theory called polyvagal theory. And there's this idea that the vagus nerve comes down, it's a cranial nerve, and it really goes from our brain into like some major organs all throughout our body. And it gives us a lot of information up to our prefrontal cortex, which again is the thing that makes us human, right? And so what it happens is that if we're paying attention to what's going on in our body, our prefrontal cortex is like, oh, like, you're experiencing a knot in your stomach. I wonder what that's about. And so all of that is information that tells us where maybe either disturbance is existing already, or like where trauma is, or it tells us information about, like, every time I was a kid, my stomach clenched up. And now I'm in this meeting with this person and my stomach is clenching up. And if I'm open to that, my body is sort of trying to tell me that it wants to heal. Yes. My body is telling me I'm scared. My body is telling me, hey, things are not completely okay here. I need you to help me. And so I guess, I know I've just shared a lot of information there, but the main point is that trauma and emotions are born in our body, not just our brain.
I mean, which isn't rocket science, because, I mean, our brain is not like just floating through the ether. Like, it's right here in my skull.
Yeah. And actually, there's a sense in which we have a brain in our body. Like, we have receptors for our brain in the rest of our body.
Yes. Right. Good point.
And so that's like, so it's not like my brain or my body. It's like my brain and my body. Like they're one thing. And there are different functions. But when we've experienced trauma, we often, or because of how we were socialized, which could be its own form of trauma, we disconnect from what's happening in the body. So in a sense, it's like we're disconnecting from a part of our brain.
Yeah.
So like, let's just say that then that part of our brain is carrying all this pain, and it's carrying, a story about our rejection. It's carrying a story about the ways that it's not okay to use our voice. It's carrying a story about the boundaries we were never allowed to set. But because that feels so uncomfortable, we're like, I can't listen to you, body. And so it will come out sideways. It will come out in anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and sometimes in chronic illness. It can come out in chronic pain. It can come out in, feelings of disgust and heaviness and oppressive, sensations in the body that we have no idea why we're experiencing that. But if we can become curious, if we can become compassionate with ourselves, it's like we begin to pull on the thread of those experiences and we integrate it with the rest of our, our prefrontal cortex that's able to hold that with compassion. And we can sort of, I don't know how else to say it, but we can care for it.
Yes.
We can say, that person makes me feel really uncomfortable. And I know that there's nothing in this present moment that tells me why that is, but I just want to be curious about that. It's neither bad nor good. It's just information. And maybe for right now, what my body needs is just for me to set a limit and to say, you know what, thanks so much for your time and I need to get going. And even those little shifts are a way that we're actually responding to our body. Or it's like, maybe I have gone through days with I don't eat all day. And at the end of the day, I'm just starving. And it's like, if I can begin to notice that at 10 a.m., I am so hungry. And I say, oh, body, you're hungry. You need some food. I'm going to give you that food that you need. It's like, that's such a tangible example of actually responding lovingly. Yeah. And it's like all of these experiences combined of just listening and attuning to what we need that move us towards wholeness.
Yeah, no, that's going to require obviously a bunch of different things, but I'm thinking right now, obviously that requires a slowing down and a paying attention, an attentiveness, which is hard enough. But if you still hate yourself, or if you still think God hates you, and you're still trying to punish yourself, then you won't feed yourself. So I mean, that's another major hurdle.
Absolutely. And that's where sometimes we really need other people with us in the process. I say, we can't give ourselves what we haven't sort of received. So because, there's that whole adage, there's a whole thing around that. But essentially, let's say we grew up in a home where it was modeled to us that our needs didn't matter. Right. Maybe it wasn't even maybe classically no one would have said you experienced trauma, but what you experienced was you are not allowed to pay attention to yourself because that's selfish and that's bad. The internal narrative that you're carrying is that it's selfish and bad to listen to your body, to listen to your emotions, to take care of yourself. And so that's where it can be really helpful to get connected with a therapist or a community that feels really safe, or even one or two other people that they can begin to model, you are worthy of being heard. And your needs do matter. And what happens is we actually need that framework. We literally need there's something in our brain called mirror neurons. And what happens is that we record in ourselves what we're observing. So if we are not observing it, we can't record it. And so there's a sense in which when someone shows us compassion, and even maybe, and sometimes that can happen even with God, like when we really can tangibly experience God, there's a sense in which that can sometimes be a template for us to give that to ourselves too. And so there's not really a perfect formula because all of us have such different stories. We have a lot of different nuances. Our critics have different words, that they might share, like might throw at us. But if we can begin to eat, like if you can't be compassionate yet, the thing I would encourage folks to do is to start with curiosity. Mm-hmm. Like to mindfully notice, like, isn't that interesting that I'm okay with giving my kids lunch, but when it's time for me to have lunch, I sort of don't make that a priority, or I think I'm almost weak for needing lunch. Or isn't that interesting that every time I think about, going for a walk at night because I know it feels really good, I start to call myself selfish. And if we could just even begin with curiosity, that can sometimes give us a lot more information that can even begin to cultivate some compassion.
Yeah. Christina Cleveland, who I had on the show earlier, she shared an exercise. I forget who it was with, but it was with I think a psychologist, where it was like, think about the last time that you were with somebody who was going through a traumatic or who had gone through a traumatic or painful experience, and think about how you conducted yourself in compassion towards them. Think about your body posture. Think about your language. Think about the volume. And now think about the last time that you went through something difficult and how you treated yourself. And I was like, oh, swear words. Yes, I am not kind to myself. So you're saying, okay, pay attention to that. Ask those questions. Why is it that I'm not kind to myself? Why is it that I have so much compassion for other people and none for myself?
And if we can even just hold that in this, really like mindfulness requires that our brain be integrated to do it. So that's where it's like, just even beginning to notice it, because oftentimes, I can't tell you how many times, and I know this because it's true of me too, like folks come in to therapy and they're like, okay, what are my 3 steps? Let's get this over with.
Boom. Healing time. Come on.
Yeah. And it's like, I get it. I really do. And there are things that we can actually practically do, but we cannot be where we're not. We cannot rush a flower to bloom. And so there's a sense in which we have to let it move. We have to let it play out. And that's why curiosity is this great posture, because it's just like, okay, I see you. I see you dynamic from my childhood going on over here. Okay. All right. Like, I don't need to fix it right now. I just am going to start to notice it. And then we begin to say, oh, I'm noticing that same dynamic actually happens at work. Oh, I'm noticing in my friendship with this person, it's happening too. Isn't that interesting? And so as we do that, without even sometimes trying, what we're doing is we're beginning to integrate. But we're doing it from that trauma-informed place where maybe it feels a little safer, because we're not rushing to be like, you need to be compassionate right now. Because maybe we're not ready yet. And we have to trust our body. We have to trust that our body will go at the pace that it can handle. And that's wisdom. Like, that is like truly the wisdom that God embedded in us, that our body gives us this information. And if we can begin to listen to that, in the sense of like, oh, okay, my body's not bad because I'm having some things come up. My body's trying to protect me. My body's trying to help me. My body's trying to tell me you're not ready for that yet. And there's no shame there.
That's beautiful. I think my favorite Aundiism is you can't hustle your way to wholeness. I just, I
so appreciate that.
Yeah, well. Okay, so your book is coming out. You've got a book. It's called Try Softer.
Yes.
Which is already melting my heart. Just the title.
Yeah. No, it comes out January 7th with Tyndale. And man, it's just honestly been such a labor of love. You and I were talking before we started recording that, it's really this, bringing together parts of my own story who as a survivor of trauma, and then wanting to really give folks some tangible tools, like to understand what does it look like to begin to I use this term compassionate attention synonymously with try softer. Like for me, that's what try softer means, is that I'm paying compassionate attention to myself. And so because
that's the last 6 months of my life.
Well, that's why I was so excited to be on here today.
That's amazing. I'm like, huh. It's a thing.
It is totally a thing. No, and I mean, I think, this is sort of the compilation of my experiences as a therapist, like bringing together a lot of the trauma-informed work and a lot of the theories that have really impacted my work as a person, but then also with clients. And so there's a lot of hands-on, tangible practices to sort of walk people through, like, okay, so try softer sounds like a good idea. So how do we do it?
Right. Or I can already hear a few people out there who are like, I've been paying attention and I can see these destructive things happen. I am aware of them, sister. That is not the problem. I don't know how to stop this crazy train.
Yeah. And I say to people, so I use this term like white knuckling. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that we, like that quote you said, like we can't hustle our way to wholeness. Like that's sort of the idea that I'm talking about. Like we white knuckle our way through pain, rather like we go into fight or flight thinking like, well, if I just try hard enough, if I push myself hard enough, if I just don't complain, if I pray hard enough, if I make God happy enough, like, then I'll be okay. And so it's really this countercultural way to be with ourselves. It's saying, oftentimes the answer isn't pushing harder. It's actually trying differently. It's trying softer. And so it's really like, how do we not just pay attention, but how do we bring in that compassion so that we're not just another critic of ourselves, but that we then have those options and those choices that compassion opens us up to.
Which is going to shortcut. It's going to cut through shame and all the other stuff that keeps us totally bound up and locked. Yes, I can't wait. So, ladies and gentlemen, check the show notes for the link to Aundi's book, Try Softer. You can pre-order it already. I 100% command you to pre-order it right now.
And I just would want to add to, like, if anybody is really resonating with what I'm talking about here, one of the things I offer when you sign up for my email list, which I can give you that link, but it's at bravelymperfect.com. I send folks a video to walk through something called grounding. And grounding is a great exercise for, when I was talking about the window of tolerance, like if we feel like we're getting out of our window of tolerance, probably the number one tool I myself use and I use with my clients is this practice of grounding, which is really just becoming super present and aware using our five senses. So if you're interested in that, I would love for you to sign up. And, I try to send out about one newsletter a month with like additional videos, kind of walking folks through practices. So
folks, do that. Do yourself a favor. I don't think I have to tell you. I don't think I have to command you. I can sense your empathy reaching out through the airwaves of the internet. Bravelymperfect.com. Aundi Kolber, that's
Aundi, AUNDIKOLBER.
On Twitter and Instagram. Grab her book, Try Softer. It's available for pre-order now. And go sign up for her email. Guys, I have interviewed a lot of people, and I have never had a guest smile as much during the interview as Aundi has been smiling this whole time. I kid you not. And I'm a smiley guy. It's a pleasure. So thank you so much for being on the show. Would you pray for us?
I would love to. Yeah. Lord, I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to talk about these deeply sacred things. And I just pray for the ears and the hearts and the bodies and the minds of anyone who hears us, that they would begin to have the courage to give themselves the compassion and the kindness that you so graciously offer us. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
You've been listening to the podcast with me, Jonathan Puddle. Thank you so much for tuning in. I believe that life is meant to be lived abundantly and with great freedom. I believe that love is meant to be powerful and to accomplish things in our life and the lives of those around us. So I quit my job, I started podcasting, I write a blog, I'm on social media, and I would love your support. I try to keep all sponsorship out of this show so that the content and the goodness can make its way to you unimpeded. But it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time, and I've got mouths to feed. If you have enjoyed this, would you consider joining me on Patreon? I'm at patreon.com/Jonathan Puddle. You can also find me at jonathanpuddle.com, where I write articles and so on. Just for as little as $3 a month, it'll help me keep this going and keep it ad-free, so we can keep discussing the depth of a rich life imbued with the goodness of God. Thanks so much for hearing me out. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can tune in next week for another amazing guest. God bless you guys.